Yeah, that loud recording voice wasn't here
Yeah,
before. They just
interesting.
like reintroduced that. Probably a good thing that
Interesting.
people know that recording is not being turned on
Hmm.
silently.
Hmm.
Office hours 19, everyone. We just did some math. I got one hand, so let's do the get those fingers up there, Lauren. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, beautiful. All right. Office hours 19. We do this every 12 p.m. on a Friday. Happy to have you here. We got three amigos today. You may hear some typing in the background. Vatsel's deep into something right now, and same with Timothy. So we miss them very much, but I'm glad that you guys showed up and some interesting things to talk about today that have emerged partly this week, and then also just something from Nihal as well too, which talking about how. Okay, I'll wait for that topic to go. Anyways, quick introduction. Tyler, nice to meet you all. One of the creators of SpeakAI. I guess I say this every week, but just love voice. Vatzel and I were talking about it yesterday. It's like if we were doing anything else, what would we be doing? I would be doing this, so I'm stuck. I'm stuck in a good way, and that's why I'm here. I love this stuff so much, and I see the potential, so much potential in language, how we can understand it, and so much meaning. It's such a beautiful thing, and how can we use that to our advantage and to make a better world? So very excited to be here. Anyone jump in?
Sure. I'm Lauren. I'm the staff accountant and the admin here. I like to play with numbers and play with words and figure things out, crack into some projects here, work with some good people. Excited to be here.
Wow, play with numbers and play with words. I really
Hmm.
like that, Lauren. Cool, cool. All right,
Nice.
yeah.
I am Nihal, digital strategist here at Speak. So I do everything from writing website copy to uh, writing our help guide, lot of writing, and also just trying to find some focus in communication.
Mm. Yeah, Nihal was just telling me, Tyler, can't have something that's not live in your deck. I said, damn it. Nihal, I said, you made me sad. I didn't mean that, Nihal. I was just joking, but it is snowing right now, which is not great, to be honest. I was running outside in 27-degree weather, this week, and I don't like the turn that this has taken. So I'm glad to be warm in here with you guys and chatting. A couple topics today. Um, one of the ones I guess I'll just set the groundwork for this before we continue on is this. So always exploring many things, and when you're building a software company, especially one that's partly visible, it's using AI, it's growing. Always get sort of approached by investors, equity firms, people who are looking to understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, what do you look towards, what does the future look like towards you for you, and got in a conversation with one of these firms, and the interesting part was like they're looking at basically ask for projections. What does 2025 look like for Speak AI? And Lauren and I had done a bunch of work to put together some projections, and I remember looking at them and like, looks pretty good. I wouldn't even say aggressive, but it just seems realistic. It seems to make sense. And I was like, yeah, that feels good. Let's share that. And and then we shared that with the team. An awesome group of people, very helpful and very supportive. I was like, yeah, you're gonna need to amp up that growth. I don't know, Lauren, the exact calculation, but I would say about 12 times the projections that we had put in. And through that process, learned a lot. Learned about the mindset that a venture firm has, the way that they're looking at the world, the way that they're looking at getting their investment back, looking at growth, and just wanted to talk about that today, with the idea being they're in their ideal wonderful world is by 2025 a company like ours is making $100 million in revenue. And I would just love to take a moment to talk about that. Maybe Lauren, you had some insights into how people put projections together, but just also just that mindset, how that changes your thinking of what we're doing and focus. And it's just a hilarious and wonderful way to like get your mind sort of stimulated partway through the week. So just wanted to make that a topic today. So I'll let you guys if you have anything right off the bat, and then we can get into a conversation about that a bit.
Yeah, sure. There's lots of different mathematical equations you can throw together for a projection. There's the whole straight line thing where you just put on a percentage of growth, and that's what's going to happen. There's also linear regression, where you have like two different variables that all have some sort of influence on one another. So, like pretty basic example is the more money you put into advertising, the more revenue you're going to get from that. So, kind of like the correlation between those two numbers. Um, But those are just, equations that you put together. It doesn't really have a lot of bearing going on in the real world of how many people are out there who want your service, how much money they have, and the amount of time that they want to, use your service for too. So there's so much more than just putting together like one little equation. Now you gotta get into like the psychology of people, of what they think they want to spend money on, and that's just becomes a matter of the relationship you build with all the different people within the market, especially like in the software market, in the psychedelic market. So it's fairly new, some very honest and very open people. So it's great to talk to them and get like an idea of where the market is going. But still, it's a lot of juggling. It's a lot of different people coming together and putting together numbers and predictions of where the world's going to be going to the next 5 years. And yeah, there's a lot to discuss, a lot of planning to do, a lot of I don't know, lots of thinking, lots of foresight, and depends if you're good at foresight or not. I'm not really sure how you get good at it. I think it's more just making a prediction and waiting for it to happen. It's like, oh, I'm pretty good at this.
Thought you read tarot cards.
That's just again random number generator, just random calculations. So, and then
Nihal, how do you've sort of come from an outside perspective where, you've come into the team, you hear conversations like this, or you hear like, like one of the things you'd worked in, I guess, a more, corporate environment where, that I guess talk about, venture firms or investment probably weren't as common, but I know you've also sort of followed along in the culture. And part of the reason why you joined was the interest in exploring and understanding startups and software more. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, whether it's just in general or also, hearing fragments of what we're experiencing as Lorne, 𝗏𝗁 and I, when we get into meetings like this.
Yeah. I'd say the number one thing that always strikes me is how it seems like a lot of VC firms and investors in general are so used to this kind of insane market at this point in time where every other company is a unicorn, right, in the making, that sometimes you'll hear these valuations, and it's not for lack of ambition or lack of a growth mindset, but you hear these projections or these desired outcomes sometimes, and you're like, okay, but like how much initial kind of funding or investment would that actually look like, right? Like if you want 25x return, like what's that initial number that we need to kind of get that jump start and growth engine going? So I think that's a very interesting thought, because it's this is no one in particular, that's like giving us $1 and then asking us to make you $100, right? So it's it becomes tough to envision until you're in the thick of things, I think. And it brings up interesting questions in terms of where our focus should lie and what's the quickest way to get to these growth targets, right? Whether that's through just doubling down on the enterprise side of things, is it kind of building two separate streams of growth, right? On the consumer side, kind of self-serve model that we have going, or do we just hunt for larger proposals? Do we hunt for multi-million-dollar contracts? Like what does that look like, essentially? Both with their pros and cons, obviously.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know if you were just before this, we were looking at 𝗏𝗁 and I sent a couple things in Slack, but we're looking at province proposal or an RFP for a system actually very like ours. It fit a lot of the check marks. Alone, I don't know if you looked at those documents yet, but when you look at the technical barriers, even like the business I guess checkpoints that you need to cross for that to be. First of all, I got surprised that we got accepted for the RFP. Like that was one. And then to see the documents that were required for that, like there's amazing, like you said, pros and cons with everything you do. And it's like, say it's $100 million is the goal. How do you break down that? Is that 100 companies at $1 million a year? now my math starts to fail in all the different scenarios of that, but very different ways that you can jump things. Or is it 500, or is it 5 million people at $20, like 500,000 people? Like, there's different, Lauren, I'm not sure if that math, I'm sorry. But those are all different, very different things. And like, I wonder, is like, again, you have to have some realism, which is, it's interesting. And just for a couple, data points from myself that I have to share, some of this stuff was like my listen, my mom works at a wonderful software company, worked there for a long time. They've been around for like 25 years. I think they have like 200 employees. They're not at $100 million in revenue. They're like in a legit massive market. And that's like 25 years of a lot of people. And also talked about, as they took on investment in their company, the growth expectations, and then also the challenges with it too. And one of the things that you see with enterprise is what you're going to get into, especially, is like very expensive development, which is pretty intense. And one of the things that I look at is, as we move forward, like even today in LinkedIn, one of the big stories was this idea of like, basically all the big American firms are coming into Canada and just posting crazy jobs and just snatching talent from Canadian companies, Toronto, Waterloo, Vancouver, all this. So, depending on how you're building the company and the requirements, if it's enterprise that you need data scientists or machine learning engineers or all of that, you're looking at a very expensive pipeline of growth to actually fund that, as well as the security compliance, data storage, and all these different things. So that stuck out to me a lot. And then one other thing was this company 𝗖𝗲𝗃, which just became a Canadian unicorn. And they started in 2016 and just crossed 30 million in revenue. So they were closing about 100K deals, and they were actually starting to close some $1 million deals, natural language processing for customer service to reduce the amount of time that it takes to answer inquiries, which is amazing business. At $30 million of revenue, they were valued at 1.2 billion Canadian. So if you look at the multiplier that's put on that business, it's massive in terms of it. So if you were at $100 million in revenue, deploying the kind of technology that 𝗖𝗃 is, or we are, their valuation, again, Lauren, my math would fail me, would be massive if they got to 100 million in revenue. So just a couple of things that have like stuck out to me after that discussion. Lauren, I'm not sure if there's anything else you're thinking, but one of the parts you talked about was, looking at, there's a couple markets that we've looked at, one of them being effective computing, massive market, about $270 billion by 2027, natural language processing, and then speech recognition. But you've had a challenge because you don't have these wonderful research reports that cost, $7K USD to $25K USD. So just would love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on market sizing these projections, especially without some of the resources that you would like.
Well, that's just like the whole like total market. Even then, like I don't think we'd be able to address all of that. Like a large amount of that whole effective computer market is dealing with like hardware and all the hardware that goes along with like medical care and the automotive industry. So unless you like know exactly like, what part of that industry like you're catering towards, so like we're like within the effective computer market, we're doing more like speech recognition analysis, and it doesn't exactly like say like before you buy the report, it doesn't tell you like, oh, of the $300 billion that this market is worth, like only 10% of that is like towards speech recognition, or like maybe most of it is. I would probably say no. I'd say hardware is probably more expensive than software, so that's probably going to be the bigger chunk of it all together. So at that point, I'm not sure like what's really worth it. Like as you said, like a lot of people buy these market reports, spend thousands of dollars on them, and then it's like, okay, I've learned nothing from this. Just give me a couple of numbers that I really don't know what to do. And it's just kind of telling me stuff that I already know from, because I'm in the market. I talk to the customers, I talk to advisors and investors. I already know what's going on here, and all you're just telling me is the same stuff I already know. So you're probably going to be able to find out more from the market from actually talking with people in the market and talking with as many people as possible. And with a small team of us of just 5 people, like Tyler, you're the only one who really like sells to anybody. You're the only one who's really out there talking to people. You're really not going to get enough, cover enough ground there. So that's where salespeople really is important. It's not so much just as important just, make sales. Like that's a huge part of it, but it's also just building relationships, building like alliances too. Because it's not just about, you buy this from that person, you sell this to that person. It's all about making friends in the market too, of working together, of marketing together. That's probably like that's what I'm like aware of anyways. That's what we've been doing by marketing with other companies. But there's also different things you can do, like you're trading your services at like a discounted prices, and maybe you're giving like a tip, like, hey, you should go after this person, I think they'd really love to work with you. It's all just um, very incestuous, lots of nepotism going on there, I'm sure. Depends on the market too. I'm sure when you're getting into banking, there's probably a bit more, yeah, you gotta know somebody. But like when it's like a new market, it seems like with psychedelics, it seems all very friendly. As long as we're all friends, we're all doing our part and keeping the ship afloat here, we're all fighting the good fight, then we're all going to work together well. But there's a lot of markets out there where it's like, yeah, you got it's like a prison gang. You have to join the club if you want to be protected.
It's a optimistic outlook, Lauren. I love it. One of the things that stuck out to me is what you talked about is like how much money in the effective computing market is going into autonomous vehicles, like, and just vehicles in general, like basically, and a lot of it is actually computer vision based. So not necessarily speech recognition, but it's basically, a camera in your computer detecting, or a camera in your car detecting if you're looking sleepy, or, based on how stressed your face is, modifying like literally the air conditioning, the lights, the colors, the music. Like it's really interesting to see. Again, sort of does align with this thesis of like personalized environments that are going to be generated. These companies are investing big money into that, and that's what you're going to run into with like enterprise contracts, right? You could have massive long sales cycle, year long plus, or like you'd have to wait for a contract. You'd have to wait for annual budgets to come out and time that directly. And so the investor that we talked about the complexity of that, and then your need for enterprise sales reps who are capable, experienced, and have done this before. Those people are expensive as hell too. I picture the people in Silicon Valley who are like, kind of thing. So I also just wonder, Anil, like just your thoughts too, but like, when you're scaling, if you're trying to get to that number, you look at scale, like, the scale of how can you reach things scaled? Like then your system needs to be fully sort of scalable. So like where are the breakdowns in our current technology that are blocking that? One is that we have this added service of human transcription. So you have this sort of like multi-side marketplace where you need to fulfill things. And if you don't have enough people, then you can't service the clients. And then I think, again, it's probably that security layer. But when I look at like, how could we drive as much growth as possible? The biggest growth channel that we've seen with people we don't know is the organic search. And like when I look at, okay, if we need to get to $100 million, we're going to give you X dollars to try to get there. That's the channel that I look at most, as well as supplementing that with outbound sales reps. But just interested in your thoughts, or when you look at that, number, that goal, how does it change what you're thinking about, what we're doing, or how you would change your marketing, or just those focus points? And you talked about a little bit that last week, which like focusing or doubling down on channels that are actually working.
Sorry, so just to clarify, so you're basically saying, let's say we got X amount of dollars to put towards marketing initiatives. Like, how would that affect how we approach kind of that kind of end target of, let's say, 100 mil?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So I think once there's funding within a marketing engine, the fun thing and the cool thing about getting money is you're able to ideally experiment a lot more, and you're able to dedicate resources to multiple buckets, right? So I think we talked about it last week, but let's say right now we know for a fact that organic is our main growth engine. So let's say we have like 3 million that goes towards marketing, right? So we're like 50% of that is going to go towards our organic initiatives, right? Whether that's hiring writers, hiring people to write guides for us, right? Doing backlink building, organic outreach, stuff like that. And then the other 50% is dedicated to between, you know, your paid channels, maybe your unconventional growth channels, whether that's through subscriptions, not subscriptions, sponsorships, whether that's through community building, right? Like maybe it's PR, and figuring all that out is definitely going to be a challenge of just like human capital as well, where how much are we bottlenecked by our team size, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Because to Lauren's point earlier about like our sales outreach at this point, it's essentially you, right?
Yeah, and I'm pretty bad at it, to be honest. You know, I need some more work.
but you're bad at it mainly because I feel like sometimes your focus once again is split, right? So instead of you dedicating your time full time to, or you know, 80% to outreach and sales and 20% to, let's say, marketing or finances, like the other parts of the business, right now I almost feel like it's like 25% all the way through, depending on the week, right? Like some weeks maybe you'll put more focus in certain areas, but other weeks you have no choice but to, you know, dive down into like customer success, let's say. And so that in a way would also feed into our marketing outcomes and growth outcomes, because at the end of the day, like marketing and sales outcomes are going to be closely tied together, right? Because marketing can bring in all the leads, you know, like let's say we're super successful, I bring in like 2 million leads, right? But if sales can only convert 1% of those, we have a problem, right? And figuring out how we can build out systems that hopefully at some point run themselves with just oversight, right? Where we have people doing tasks and helping us achieve goals while we're just looking like forward looking, and building out a system that allows us to do that, I think will be super important for long-term sustainable growth.
When you look at it, if you were in charge of this company, what avenue do you like better, or is it a mix of it, or like, but like when you look at enterprise versus, you know, the self-serve model, how do you think about that, especially in terms of marketing and acquisition?
It's interesting because speaking to Lauren's point earlier about customer psychology and the price people are willing to pay to solve a problem, right? It's so yesterday on like Product Hunt, I sent Vatzel this link to when you look at it, it's a product that I've 100% thought about in the past, and they built it. So essentially it's they convert your newsletters into a Kindle friendly format and automatically send newsletters as they come in to your Kindle, right? So, and the service costs $5 to $10 a month, right? So very niche offering, very almost individual need-based offering, but it's a low enough cost where I was like, for $5 a month, yeah, I'd pay that to like have my newsletters on my Kindle, right? And so when it comes to consumer side offerings, I feel like that's where the benefit lies, where if the price is right, let's say we got people for $5 a month, right? Like people were willing to pay $5 a month to use our system, right? Would that be more conducive to, once again, volume? So we get 100,000 users at $5 a month, or is it more sustainable and scalable to aim for, you know, 50,000 users at $15 a month, right? And which one helps us manage things on the technical side better, as well as just from a business perspective? Like what's more sustainable, relying on 50,000 customers or relying on like 100,000 customers, right? Even if they're paying a lower volume, and figuring out those solutions.
Lauren, any thoughts about that?
Well, you just gotta think about like how many users are even potentially out there
Mhm.
in the whole world. If the whole goal of just doing it through software is to get to 50 to 100,000 paying users every single month, and it's like, well, who are they? Where are they? Are they using someone else? Do we have to steal them away from Otter or Rev or something? Are they just, they don't even know that there's a solution out there? They don't know how to get a hold of us. We don't know how to get a hold of them. It's a lot of guesswork. It's a lot
Mhm.
of, it'd be nice if there was reports out there that just flat out say, hey, there's this many people that want this. That's all you need to know really when you're trying to sell something. It's like, okay, just need to know how to get to them and get money from them pretty much. So I don't know. At that point too, you have to like, because there's no way that like all the people who need like transcription services don't have a transcriber. You have to find out like who they're going to and like how you can innovate on top of that person, how you can be better than them. And yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. I agree. And so one of the things that I've seen, I mean, we've talked about it as a team many times, or like it just gets links shared in Slack, but like with the change in the pandemic and everyone moving into Zoom, like I just remember this shift of before the pandemic, people were like, why are you doing this? You know what I mean? Like, what, this doesn't make any sense. And then as we shifted into the pandemic and everyone got into Zoom recordings and calls, then everyone started to see, like, you started to see this proliferation of systems that hooked into Zoom, transcribed it, took clips, you know, shared those clips, or um, am I unstable? I apologize if I'm frozen here. But like, you know, and I can name off the Rewatch, Fireflies, Grain. I don't, probably many more than that, that are systems that have somewhat of a similar offering to ours, valuable, and have also taken on like, and even Anyclips started in 2006. They just got 47 million in capital. You know, so it's also like, okay, great. We know that these things are, you know, becoming more saturated and more competitive, and you really then have a decision to make on like where you spend that time, where you invest, and like what things based on everything that you're seeing can you truly differentiate on and create value, something that's worth, if there are so many offerings and people are like all of us pretty savvy searchers where they're looking for many different possible solutions and offerings, that we're creating something that strikes a nerve or actually hits something like. And again, just one example was like people coming to us multiple times and saying, hey, we want to do the transcription part, but then we're doing manual redaction. So can you automatically redact personally identifiable information from these transcripts? Because we're doing it manually right now, and none of the other systems do that. So you can find little areas within this massive market that can create immense value for people, but you have to go very deep into that market to even figure out what those offerings are. Um, yeah, that's it. I think that's it. Anything else on this topic specifically? Like, I guess we sort of weave through it. One thing I've talked about maybe in the past is just this idea, I love it, of like binary decision making, which is like $100 million, if that's the goal, if that's the KPI. I mean, first you have to break that down into much smaller goals, which is million, 5 million, 10 million, 25 million. Like, you need to figure out that part first. But I just love that idea of like, is this contributing to this? Yes or no? And if not, then you need to redirect your efforts, or prioritize. And I think if you are aiming for big goals for that, you also have to drastically question and be harsh about it, of like what you've done in the past, and figure out what you need to, again, continue, what you need to kill, and what needs complete adaptation or pivoting to make those things come to life.
I think it'll be interesting too, because at an earlier stage in the company, you, you kind of have the freedom of everyone having almost like an equal voice. But I feel like at a certain point, there will come a point where, you know, the decisions will have to be made, for the most part, like a kind of top level decisions will have to be made by, you know, 5 to 10 people at the top, essentially. Like obviously integrating feedback and suggestions from the rest of the team, but at a certain point, it really does become a, you know, if it's someone's job, just let them do it. And you know, you almost not criticize, you evaluate the process and the outcome versus like during the course of the thing being built versus like at the very start, right? because I don't think, for instance, we have like lovely discussions about like, let's say like dashboard designs and, like things that are very important to us. But realistically, at a certain point, we probably won't be able to sit in on every one of those meetings, and we won't be able to like oversee every single decision that's being made, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, and figuring out systems to manage that as well will be an interesting challenge.
It seems like just as fun. Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think anything else, but it's just, again, it's interesting. Like, you look at growth, like we're on pace already with contracts in place of having really great growth this year. And then you get into this thing where it's just like, it's not enough. Or if it's like if you take on funding, it's like, we don't care if it's that much. We want you to, we don't want you to make $1 for 5 years in terms of profit. We just want you to scale top line revenue. And then, you figure out some of these pieces. So I learned so much. I look forward to sharing more on these lessons, that we get from some of these conversations and just in general.
Sorry, just as a feed off question, like how many of these fast growth, high growth companies do you think are profitable?
I'll look at one example. One of my favorite companies in the world, Spotify, not profitable. You know what I mean? Burning cash. Amazing company. You know what I mean? You would think they would be, but they're not. And so, and I've had some very good friends who have been very successful in business from that, standpoint of growth and, like not profitable, but last year we had, positive, like net earnings. And I remember someone who was in a high growth XY Combinator, like, wow, that sounds wonderful. And in a way it was wonderful, but at the same time, you get in this cycle either way of always wanting more. And so I can't give you the exact answer, but a lot of them not profitable, and a lot of them is just like get growth, then figure out how to generate the revenue. Because of the way that we were set up, we had the sort of constraints the other way, which were, how can we build this system so that we can generate revenue? Because again, we could sink the company if we don't. And I think that's a limitation. Like we had that Y Combinator interview, and I remember sitting there with Michael 𝗫𝗫, and he saw our limited thinking. You know what I mean? Like the way that he was looking at it is like, don't think of it as if money was not a thing to think about. Think about it as just the problem and growth as quick as possible. And that was a really good learning lesson, and it was also replicated in that conversation that 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗁 and I had with this investment firm the other day, where they're like, no, don't worry really about that. Just focus on how you're going to do this, and the money's just going to keep coming. So, and also some amazing threads on Twitter a couple of weeks ago or this week, where I was talking about like a lot of people saying that the first 500K million was the hardest thing they've ever done in their life. But after they raised $1 million, it was very easy to raise $20 million. So that was really interesting too. I don't necessarily think any of that is easy, but nice to hear that I guess it gets easier. And my I guess thought is like, I've always just wanted to have like I wanted to have a company that can grow fast, but be sustainable and also have a positive impact on the world. And I guess that, I would like that not to be something that stops, like, for example, having a positive impact stops the high growth or stops the sustainability. Like, that triple bottom line, I guess, is a very hard thing to achieve. But in my still idealistic world, that's something that you can do. So, good. Anything else? Okay. So we have one more topic. Nihal, do you want to set the stage for this?
Sure. So I was just reading this article earlier about how Microsoft, I still don't quite understand it, but essentially they've gotten exclusive licensing rights to GPT-3. Once again, don't understand how that works, considering that it's still open AI and other people can still build using GPT-3. But essentially they're building it into their low code platform and trying to essentially implement GPT-3, so understanding of human language, semantic search, to build code for you, right? So you can ask it, like, I think the example in this article was, I'm just gonna watch it real quick to remember. But they ask the user, what would you like to do with your data? And the user basically asked, show me customers from the US whose subscription is expiring, right? Or is expired. And it basically generated a formula for them to find all those users within their database, which is sick. I mean, really cool stuff. And I was wondering if there would be a way for us to implement GPT-3 into our system to improve how people semantically search for content within their database, right? So if someone uploaded 5 text files, 10 videos, and like 3 audio recordings, and they asked, like, how many times did I talk about X company in the past month, right? Like, is that potential there for us to really build a powerful, almost personal search engine for people to find for knowledge recall, right? And what that would look like, how, like, does it even contribute to business goals and our growth, right? Is that a valuable feature at all? And the second idea would be on the marketing and writing side, where you can use it for content creation, right? So you have your 𝗕𝗙𝗊𝗁 AI, your Jarvis, your Copy AI, all
Conversion
doing
AI.
conversion AI, right? Like doing all their, like, just marketing copy and AI copywriting, and integrating that into our system as well. I feel like has its uses. What those uses are, I haven't fleshed that out completely, but we've had some interesting conversations about how we can improve the marketing capabilities of our platform as well. And I feel like that would fit neatly into that bucket of features.
Okay, very interesting. GPT-3, I believe, is hosted on Azure. You know what I mean? Microsoft Azure, and they've been a big funder of that and driver of that. And yeah, it's built on the most, well, apparently Google has a better one, but built on the most data points ever for a language model. And I would say the example that you gave for querying in, that part's actually, like, we could accomplish that now with Speak without GPT-3. The GPT-3, like, what I would look at is, like what you talked about, which is like language generation, or also like a very intelligent like summarization, for example. Like, what, here's, there's 50 recordings that I did in the last month. um, you know they're all transcribed. Tell me a summary of last month. Give me a summary of what happened. Or, like, there's so much more that understanding that it has can produce. It's incredible. And like the example you gave is just saying, like, giving it you're basically giving a command. And that's all really, I mean, programming is, in a way, is you putting the right input in to generate a command. And then, and 𝗏𝗏𝗁, when we made a joke about replacing programmers and developers, he said no. So I'm glad to hear that confidence in there. But definitely very interesting, especially from people who are non-technical, to be able to pick natural language, even speech to text, or just a simple natural language, just text into it for a command to generate code automatically. That is a power that we have not really had in the past, and it's amazing the potential there. I think the other part that you talked about is the marketing generation piece. And like, one of the things that, I don't know if you ever use these, Nihal, but like I was maybe that's not a good thing to share, but there's like lots of like content rewriting machines before, not like these systems came. So like there were content-rewriter.com, blah, blah, and it used some sort of like, I forget the process that it used, but it was using, like, it would take like a word. So you would take a piece of content from a website, paste it in, and then it would find synonyms or like replace that sentence fragment, and just, or even like switch the order around. And it was, I mean, sometimes it was good, other times it was horrible. And a lot of companies and people, marketers, use that to build like blog networks, or just build like like sort of low quality content to help drive search engine rankings. And I was a huge advocate of that. And there was definitely a part of Speak that wanted to integrate that technology. There's literally probably some APIs in Trello at that with that part in there. Because I think you're right. The content generation part is a huge driver. We've seen Copy AI. They, in under a year, I believe I've gone to 1.2 million ARR because people are like, I don't want to write this over 100K a month, or at least start to generate ideas. So I think there is a lot of power in content generation, and then like the power of systems like that. And GPT-3 just opened a $100 million fund for companies that are using their technology. So they're investing in the growth of people who are plugged into that system. Ideally is yes. There's a lot of people on that wait list. It's also in our product log to have applied about 8 months ago. So probably if we had applied 8 months ago, we probably would have had access to it and started playing around with it. As today, we do not. And if we were to then apply now, want to make sure you're putting in something very compelling, because there's more people who are, turned on to this and looking at it. And of course, there's also the other part to consider, which is like a lot of people consider this system to be horrifying. The fact that it can replicate almost a pure consciousness, the quality of content that it can generate, and the fact that we're moving into a world where content that we're interfacing and reading with is generated completely by machines, and we don't know the difference. So I guess when you talk about the impact or ethical parts of the work that you're doing, there is somewhat of a consideration here. And Elon Musk sort of famously left OpenAI because he said he didn't like the possibilities of what were coming from the work that they were doing. Then he went and did Neuralink, but that's a different topic. So, Lorne, I don't know if you have anything.
They're not aiming high enough. We got to go deeper here.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go into your brain instead. I don't know, Lorne, you're a writer, so like any thoughts, I guess, on this or technology? Yeah, just would love to hear what you think.
Sure. Like I've even heard about they have like algorithms to paint a portrait now too, which it makes sense and it doesn't make sense, because like if you think about, like, for most design work, you would think it's all just tastes and whatnot. But if you like go into like the history of art and shit like that, they're always talking about like, oh, there's algorithms, there's dimensions, there's all these different rules of numbers and placement, and it's all important for design work. And that makes even more sense for just writing something. Like if it's like a work of fiction, if it's like some sort of speech or whatever you're writing, it makes total sense that it's all just very objective, especially when it's like you're getting into machine learning, where it's just like things building on top of each other. Like everybody can like read like Shakespeare, and most people will agree like this is really good. So you just like layer Shakespeare on top of Shakespeare, and then eventually you're going to get an algorithm putting out stuff that's as good as Shakespeare that we can all agree on. And as far as like if that's good or bad, I don't know. It frees up a lot more time to enjoy life as opposed to work. I'm sure people enjoy, writing and drawing or even coding too. Is I don't know. Maybe it opens up a new spectrum of work that we're not able to get to just because we're doing other stuff that needs to get done. As far as like actually incorporating this stuff into Speak too, I think it's probably a bit too complicated at the moment for what we're doing. Especially like what I'm just thinking about is like, so you'll say a prompt and like the whole machine will decide to put together code for you. And what happens if the code's not right? What if it's broken? How are you supposed to debug that? Do you just make another prompt like saying, hey, that's wrong, and then it's just going to magically go in there? Well, not magically. I'm sure there's some sort of process to go in there and debug itself and do it all over again. So I feel like there's still going to be some level of expertise going into that. You're probably going to have to do a prompt, look at the code, understand the code, and maybe like tweak it yourself. You probably have to have some understanding of how code works to begin with before you can really use it. And maybe someday it'll be relevant to what we're doing. It's just a matter of what's faster, what's cheaper to type it in, get your thing, or ask for, it just populated by itself. And that's the thing with like Elon Musk saying about all the automatic driving too. It's like it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than standard driving. It just has to be a little bit better than what we're doing now. And I don't know how good it is compared to like what we do now, but yeah, it's a potential that we don't have to work, which is nice, but it's also not. I don't know. It's a whole new. It's unexplored territory for all of humanity. We've never had to not work before to survive.
I would say like I guess the part that, you know, the more simple integration, like one of the things you talk about is like if you say, hey, you know, Alexa, or hey, Google Assistant, like do this, you can say that phrase in many different ways and it still captures the meaning and intent of it and gives you the response that you're looking for. So at a very simple level, that would be, you know, it's like, hey, tell me every time that I was, sad in the last month. And it wouldn't just look for the word sad, it would find all the intent and meaning around that and give you the output instead of the very rudimentary search where we're doing right now sometimes, which is just sad, the word sad specifically. So like there's a pretty, I guess that's not simple, but it would really improve the potential and accuracy of recall of the system. And then just lastly, my part I thought, which you touched on, which is, I mean, two parts maybe, but like the music, like same thing with music. Music is so formulaic. Like one of my favorite things was like the 4-chord song where this, like, you know, I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah, the comedy group plays all the songs that had the same 4 chords, and it's like every song you've ever heard. So it's actually much more formulaic than we think. Very interesting stuff. And then lastly was like the that image generation part that you're talking about too. I have a deep fascination with this, where you can just say something and it will generate that image, completely net new image. Like the famous one right now is some sort of like avocado chair, and it's like a chair that's an avocado, and it just generate that in real time based off the input that you said. So I think there's a layer of creativity that this can induce, and also just like personalization, and probably what you're talking about, Lauren, too, where a lot of things that, like, it's really going to blur what we consider art and original. You know, we're headed into quite a future here. So we're almost at time. Is there anything else that you guys want to touch on that, or any last points as we close this out?
Where's the rest of the team? What's going on here?
There,
Everybody's hard at work.
Everyone, you know what? I like it. I said I will continue to show up here every day at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will rant for an hour if necessary to keep this streak alive. But you know, the fact that you know, teams prioritizing things. I know Tim's hard at development right now, and I mean, probably again hear it a little bit through the mic, but 𝗏𝗀𝗄's banging away on the keyboard right now. So that means that there's something good happening. We do good this way, they do good that way, and it all works out. But again, I'm appreciative of you guys showing up and spending some time chatting about these topics. Nihal,
it was fun.
Anything else from you?
None. No, nothing off the top of my head. I think it will be interesting to just see, like, you know, just as a reminder, we do have our free trial switch coming up, so it'll be an interesting 2 weeks to kind of close out that process and see what the next month or so looks like.
I had some fear for a bit that we weren't going to get there, but Tim looks like he's making great progress today, which is awesome to see. And definitely some emails and some things going out. And, you know, I do take heart because, yeah, as we mentioned, we've been switching from freemium to a free trial, which is part of this push to figure out where we're producing value. And people are continuing to sign up for the application, not seeing an option that there's a free option. So we're not really fully fleshed out in that execution yet, but that's at least a positive indicator. And actually the signups have accelerated. So I can't complain yet. It's just now, if they do log in, you know, what happens when it's a blocker there that says, hey, sorry, you got to pay for this now. And also just the first onboarding experience that we talked with, sort of this triage page to create that first trigger. And then there's also the upside, which is that people can get some free time to upload something too. So hopefully we can actually create a better experience there. I got some emails to send out next week to remind people. So that'll be lots of fun. Lauren, you're off mute. Any other things?
No, I'm good. I not have stuff to talk about, but probably shouldn't dispel that to the general public.
Okay, wow. Very Curious one. Okay, well, we can talk about we can talk about that after. Okay, well, this was I think I'm good. This was a ton of fun. We actually only did 2 topics today, which is a lot less. Sometimes we stream many things, so this was fun to actually give some time to talk about this, and look forward to sharing more as always. And appreciate anyone who watches and listens to this. Thank you so much for joining.
No problem. Have a good one.